The night my husband tried to bury me, he made one mistake. He left me alive long enough to hear him confess.
My name is Claire Bennett. I was 42 years old, married for 18 years, and living in a quiet neighborhood outside Richmond, Virginia. From the street, my life looked almost perfect. I had a white colonial house, a successful husband, and a small accounting business I ran from a room above our garage. My husband, Daniel, was a respected real estate developer. He wore expensive suits, remembered everyone's birthday, and donated money to local charities. People trusted him. I trusted him most of all. That was why I did not understand what was happening when I woke up in the darkness. My head was pounding. My wrists were tied behind me. Cold metal pressed against my cheek, and every breath tasted like rust and gasoline. I was inside the trunk of a car. At first, I thought we had been in an accident. Then I tried to move, and the plastic ties cut into my skin. Memories returned in broken pieces. Daniel pouring wine at dinner, his hand resting on my shoulder, the room tilting, his voice saying, "You work too hard, Claire. Let me take care of you tonight." Then nothing. The car slowed and turned onto a rough road. Gravel struck the bottom of the vehicle. I forced myself to breathe quietly. When the engine stopped, I heard 2 doors open. Daniel was not alone. "You used too much," a woman said. I knew that voice. It belonged to my younger sister, Natalie. For several seconds, I forgot the pain in my wrists. Natalie was 36. I had practically raised her after our mother died. I had paid part of her college tuition, let her stay with us after her divorce, and given her a job managing one of Daniel's offices. The 2 people I trusted most were standing outside the trunk, discussing whether they had given me too much poison. "She's breathing," Daniel said. "That's what matters." Not for long. My stomach turned. They walked a few steps away. But the night was quiet enough for their voices to carry. "After the car burns," Daniel said, "the police will assume she drove off the road. The alcohol and pills will explain everything." "What about the money?" "The insurance pays me. Her company transfers to me. Then we sell the house and leave." And Natalie laughed softly. "And no one will know about Rivergate." Rivergate. That name cut through my fear. Rivergate Commons was Daniel's largest development project. 3 years earlier, he had built luxury apartments on land near the James River. The project had made him rich. It had also nearly destroyed our marriage because he refused to show me the full financial records. I had found something that afternoon. While preparing our taxes, I had discovered payments to construction companies that did not exist. Millions of dollars had moved through false accounts. One account carried Natalie's electronic signature. I had printed 3 pages before Daniel came home early. Now I understood. They were not only killing me for insurance money, they were silencing me. The trunk opened. Daniel stood above me in the moonlight. His face looked calm, almost gentle. Natalie stood beside him wearing my gray raincoat. "Claire," Daniel whispered. I kept my eyes half closed and let my body hang loose. "Is she awake?" Natalie asked. Daniel touched my neck. I held my breath until bright spots danced behind my eyelids. "Barely," he said. They lifted me out and dropped me into the driver's seat. We were on an unfinished mountain road overlooking a deep, wooded slope. Daniel cut the plastic ties, placed my hands on the steering wheel, and fastened the seat belt around me. Then he opened a bottle of bourbon and poured it over my dress. Natalie placed an empty pill bottle beneath the passenger seat. "I'm sorry," Daniel said. His voice sounded so sincere that I almost opened my eyes. "Don't do that," Natalie snapped. "You chose us." Ooze. Daniel kissed her. That hurt more than the poison. He had not simply betrayed me with another woman. He had betrayed me with the little sister, whose nightmares I had once sat beside until morning. Daniel put the car in neutral. Natalie released the parking brake. The vehicle began to roll. I waited until I heard their footsteps moving away. Then I opened my eyes. The road disappeared beneath the hood. Trees rushed toward me. My arms felt like wet rope, but I grabbed the wheel and pulled. The car struck a guard post, turned sideways, and slid over the edge. Branches shattered the windshield. Metal screamed. My shoulder slammed against the door. The car rolled once, then stopped against 2 pine trees. Smoke filled the cabin. I could not feel my left hand. Blood ran into my eye. Somewhere behind me, fire cracked. I tried the seat belt. It would not open. Above the smoke, I heard Daniel shouting from the road. "It's burning. Come on." Their second car drove away. I was alone. Flames climbed over the back seat. I pulled the small metal pin from my hair and pushed it into the seat belt release. Once. Twice. On the third try, the buckle opened. I fell against the roof because the car rested on its side. I kicked the windshield, but it did not move. The fire grew hotter. Then I remembered the emergency tool. Daniel kept in the center console. He had bought it after seeing a television report about flooded cars. The tool was still there. One strike broke the side window. I crawled through jagged glass and rolled into wet leaves. Behind me, the gasoline caught. The explosion lifted the car and threw heat across my back. I kept moving downhill. I do not remember reaching the creek. I remember cold water around my knees. I remember seeing orange light between the trees. Then I heard voices above me. Daniel and Natalie had returned. "The driver's side is empty," Natalie said. She couldn't have survived. Then where is she? Their flashlights moved through the woods. I lay beneath the muddy bank with only my nose above the water. My teeth shook so hard I was certain they would hear. Daniel came close enough that I could see his shoes. For one terrible moment, his light stopped on the water. Then a siren sounded in the distance. Someone had reported the fire. Daniel swore. He and Natalie climbed back toward the road. I stayed in the creek until their engine disappeared. That was where my old life ended. Before sunrise, I pulled myself into an abandoned hunting cabin 2 miles away. There was no electricity, but I found a blanket, a first aid box, and an old battery radio. The morning news reported that local businesswoman Claire Bennett was missing after a suspected drunk driving accident. Her husband was devastated. Daniel stood in front of cameras and begged me to come home if I was alive. Then Natalie stepped beside him and held his hand. I listened from the darkness with dried blood on my face. They believed I was injured, frightened, and alone. They were right about the first 2 things. They were wrong about the last, because hidden inside the lining of my coat was a second key. One Daniel did not know existed. And that key opened the box containing every secret he had tried to kill me for. 2. Homondo ho disappeared. The key belonged to a safe, deposit box at Commonwealth Federal Bank. 6 months earlier, I had started copying financial records from Daniel's business. At first, I was not investigating him. I was protecting us. Rivergate Commons had begun receiving legal complaints. Tenants reported black mold, leaking gas lines, and cracks in the foundation. Daniel insisted the complaints were exaggerated. He said greedy lawyers were targeting him because the project was successful. I wanted to believe him. Then a young maintenance worker named Luis Ortega died when a parking structure partially collapsed. Daniel called it a tragic accident. The official report blamed defective steel supports. But one night, while reconciling our personal accounts, I saw a payment to a company called Blue Ridge Materials. The payment description said, "Premium structural steel." The amount was huge. I searched the state business records. Blue Ridge Materials existed only on paper. Its mailing address belonged to a storage unit rented by Natalie. I asked Daniel about it. He smiled and kissed my forehead. "You're reading records you don't understand," he said. I was a certified public accountant. I understood them perfectly. After that, I began keeping copies. I stored them in a safe, deposit box under my mother's maiden name. The box held bank statements, photographs, emails, and a flash drive. It also held a sealed envelope from Luis Ortega. Luis had visited my office 2 weeks before he died. He looked exhausted. He said Rivergate's construction team had replaced approved steel with cheaper material. When he threatened to report it, Daniel's project manager offered him money. Luis refused. He gave me copies of inspection reports and asked me to keep them safe. I promised I would. Then he died. For 3 years. I had lived with the shame of breaking that promise. Now Daniel had tried to kill me too. I stayed in the hunting cabin for 2 days. I cleaned my cuts, wrapped my shoulder, and listened to the radio. Police found blood inside the burned car, but no body. Daniel offered a $50,000 reward. Volunteers searched the woods. News stations showed our wedding pictures and described our loving marriage. On the second evening, a pickup truck stopped outside the cabin. I found a rusted hunting knife and hid behind the door. The man who entered was tall, gray-haired, and carrying groceries. When he saw me, he raised both hands. "Claire Bennett." I gripped the knife. "Who are you?" "Thomas Ortega." Luis was my son. I had met Thomas once at the funeral. He had aged since then, but I recognized his eyes. "How did you find me?" "That coat belonged to my wife," he said. "She donated it to a shelter. You bought it at a church sale last winter. Remember?" I looked down at the dark green coat I had grabbed from the cabin. Then I saw a tiny tracking tag sewn beneath the collar. Thomas explained that he used the cabin during hunting season. The security alert had appeared on his phone when I opened the door. "I saw the news," he said. I figured a missing woman hiding in my cabin probably had a reason. I lowered the knife. Then I told him everything. Thomas listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat at the small table and covered his face. "Luis told me someone honest had the papers," he said. "Never told me it was you. I should have gone to the police." "Would they have believed you?" "I don't know." Daniel Bennett sits on the mayor's business council. He plays golf with the police commissioner. The project inspector retired to Florida with a new boat. His words confirmed my deepest fear. Evidence alone might not be enough. Daniel had money, influence, and a perfect public image. Thomas looked at me. "What are you going to do?" "First, I'm going to stay dead." That answer surprised both of us. But the more I considered it, the more certain I became. If I returned immediately, Daniel would claim the crash had confused me. He would say I had mixed alcohol and medicine. Natalie would support him. Their lawyers would destroy my reputation before a trial began. If I remained missing, they would feel safe. Safe people became careless. Thomas drove me to a clinic in a rural county. A doctor he trusted treated my shoulder and stitched the cut above my eye without entering my name into the hospital system. Afterward, Thomas took me to his sister's empty farmhouse outside Charlottesville. I cut my hair, dyed it dark brown, and began using my mother's first name, Elaine. The next morning, Thomas went to the bank with my key and a signed authorization I had prepared before the crash. He returned with the contents of the box. We spread everything across the kitchen table. The records proved that Daniel had transferred more than $8 million through false suppliers. They proved Natalie had approved payments. They showed that the city inspector received monthly consulting fees. But they did not prove Daniel ordered Luis's death. They also did not prove he had tried to murder me. Then we opened Luis's envelope. Inside was a memory card I had never noticed. The card contained a video recorded inside Rivergate's underground garage. Luis had hidden his phone behind a toolbox. Daniel appeared on the screen with his project manager, Warren Pike. The supports passed inspection, Warren said. Because we paid for them to pass, Daniel replied. If Ortega talks, we all go down. Daniel looked directly toward the hidden camera, though he did not seem to see it. Then make sure he doesn't talk. The video ended. Thomas stood so quickly his chair fell backward. He killed my son. The video shows intent, I said carefully. But a defense lawyer will argue Daniel meant to fire or threaten him. Thomas struck the table. What else do we need? We need Warren Pike. A Warren had vanished after Luis's death. Daniel claimed he had moved overseas. I now suspected Daniel had paid him to disappear. We spent a week following the money. One false company sent regular payments to a bank in Tennessee. The account holder was a woman named Megan Pike, Warren's daughter. Her public photographs showed her standing outside a lakeside bar called The Lantern near Knoxville. Thomas wanted to drive there immediately. I stopped him. If Warren sees you, he will know this is about Luis. If he sees me, he will call Daniel. Then how do we reach him? I looked at the files. We don't reach him. We make him come to us, using a new email address. I sent Warren one photograph, the first page of Luis's inspection report. Below it, I wrote, I know what happened at Rivergate. Daniel is preparing to blame you. Meet me Friday, or the full file goes to the FBI. The reply came 11 minutes later. Where? I chose a busy truck stop outside Bristol, near the Virginia-Tennessee border. Thomas parked across the road while I waited inside wearing a baseball cap and large glasses. Warren arrived 30 minutes late. He looked nothing like the confident executive I remembered. He was thinner, with nervous eyes and shaking hands. He sat across from me. Who are you? I removed the glasses. The color left his face. You're dead. That's what Daniel believes. Warren stood to leave. I placed my phone on the table and played the video. He sat down again. Daniel will kill me, he whispered. He already plans to. I showed him transfers from Daniel's private account to Megan. The payments had stopped 2 weeks earlier. Another document named Warren as the sole officer of every false supply company. Daniel was building a case that would place all responsibility on him. Warren, read the pages twice. What do you want? The truth. Recorded. Every payment, every threat, and everything that happened to Luis. His mouth tightened. And if I refuse? Then Daniel keeps your money, the FBI receives these records, and you spend the rest of your life wondering which dark road he chose for you. For a long time, Warren said nothing. Then he leaned closer. Luis's death wasn't the first. The noise of the truck stop seemed to disappear. What do you mean? Rivergate wasn't built on empty land, he said. And the people who owned it never agreed to sell. That was the moment I understood that my husband's crimes went deeper than fraud. Much deeper. Part 3. Be it Rivergate. Before Rivergate Commons became luxury apartments, the property belonged to 3 elderly siblings, Ruth, Paul, and Evelyn Mercer. The Mercers had lived there their entire lives. Their small house stood on 20 acres near the river. Daniel told me they had sold willingly and moved to Arizona. Warren told a different story. The Mercers refused every offer. Daniel responded by creating false tax debts against the property. When that failed, he paid a court clerk to alter a document. 1 week later, Ruth Mercer supposedly signed the land away. There was only one problem. Ruth had suffered a stroke. She could not hold a pen. Paul Mercer threatened to sue. Then his house caught fire, Paul died inside. Ruth and Evelyn disappeared. Daniel said their nephew took them west. Warren told me. Did you believe him? Warren looked at the table. I believed what kept me rich. His honesty was ugly, but useful. And Louise. Louise found personal belongings under the old foundation. Women's shoes. Ruth's medical bracelet. He started asking questions. Cold moved through me. Are you saying Ruth and Evelyn are under Rivergate? I don't know. Daniel ordered that section filled with concrete before anyone could inspect it. I thought about the hundreds of people living above that garage. Families parked their cars there every night, never knowing what might lie beneath them. Warren agreed to record a statement if I guaranteed protection for Megan. I could not guarantee anything, but Thomas knew a retired federal prosecutor named Rebecca Shaw. Years earlier, she had helped his family with Louise's case. She had left the Justice Department after accusing a supervisor of burying evidence connected to powerful donors. Rebecca met us at the farmhouse. She listened to Warren's recording, reviewed the documents, and called someone she trusted in the FBI's public corruption unit. But she warned us not to move yet. Daniel's defense will say Warren is a guilty man inventing stories to save himself, she said. The financial records are strong, but the murders need physical evidence. Then we find it, I said. Rivergate's original construction plans showed a service tunnel beneath the eastern garage. The tunnel had been sealed after the project opened. Warren knew another entrance through a drainage channel near the river. Thomas and I went there after midnight. I knew it was dangerous. I also knew I could not ask anyone else to enter a place Daniel might have turned into a grave. The drainage channel smelled of wet stone. We crawled through mud until we reached a steel maintenance door. Warren's old access code still worked. Beyond it, a narrow tunnel ran beneath the building. Thomas carried a small camera. I carried Louise's original map. We found the sealed section behind a wall of newer concrete. At the bottom, someone had left a small opening around a water pipe. Thomas shone his light through it. At first, we saw dirt. Then the beam touched a silver bracelet. The name RUH was engraved across it. Thomas closed his eyes. I photographed everything without disturbing the site. Rebecca had warned us that evidence collected improperly could become useless. As we turned to leave, footsteps sounded in the tunnel. Someone had entered behind us. Thomas switched off the light. We pressed against the wall. Two men approached. I recognized one voice immediately. It belonged to my husband. Warren's gone, Daniel said. His daughter hasn't seen him in 3 days. The second man was Detective Alan Croft, the officer leading the investigation into my disappearance. Then he's running, Croft said. Or Claire found him. Claire is dead. Her body was never recovered. They stopped on the other side of the maintenance door. Daniel continued. Someone accessed the old company archives yesterday. I want this place cleaned. Cleaned how? Par concrete through the service openings. All of them. Thomas's hand tightened around my arm. And the Ortega father, Croft asked. He's been asking questions again. Watch him. Keys rattled. They were coming through the door. Thomas pointed toward a ladder leading to a ventilation grate. We climbed as quietly as we could. My injured shoulder screamed with every movement. The door opened below us. We reached the grate, but the bolts were rusted. Daniel's flashlight swept across the tunnel wall. Thomas forced one bolt loose. The second would not turn. I heard Daniel stop. Did you hear that? A Croft drew his gun. Thomas pulled with both hands. The metal grate broke free and crashed onto the riverbank outside. We crawled out and ran. A bullet struck the concrete beside my head. Thomas and I reached the trees as Daniel emerged from the drain. Claire! He shouted. Hearing my name froze me for half a second. He had seen me. Thomas pushed me forward, and we disappeared into the woods. Our car was parked half a mile away. By the time we reached it, sirens were approaching from both directions. Croft had called his own department. He would tell them armed trespassers had broken into Rivergate. Rebecca drove us to a safe house that night. The next morning, every news station reported that I was alive and wanted for questioning in connection with fraud at my own company. Daniel had moved first. He released false financial records showing that I had stolen $2 million. Detective Croft claimed I staged the crash to escape. My photograph appeared beneath the words, "Fii ac countescent." People who had once called me a friend condemned me online. Clients announced they had been deceived. Daniel gave an interview from our living room. "I loved my wife," he said, fighting tears. "But I now believe Claire was living a secret life." Natalie sat beside him. She wore my mother's necklace. That small detail changed something inside me. Fear had kept me cautious. Grief had kept me human. But watching my sister wear our mother's necklace, while helping Daniel erase me, burned away the final part of my hesitation. I no longer wanted only to survive. I wanted them to feel safe enough to reveal everything. Rebecca's FBI contact said he needed 48 hours to secure warrants. Detective Croft's involvement made every local move dangerous. 48 hours was too long. Daniel planned to fill the tunnel the next morning. So I called him. He answered on the first ring. "Claire." "Hello, Daniel." He breathed my name like a prayer. "Thank God. Tell me where you are. You're hurt and confused." "I remember the trunk." Silence. "I remember the bourbon." I continued. "I remember Natalie releasing the brake. And I have Luis Ortega's video." His gentle voice disappeared. "What do you want?" "My passport. $500,000. And a written confession clearing me of the fraud." He laughed. "You think you're in control?" "I think the video goes public tomorrow unless we meet." "Where?" I named an abandoned textile warehouse south of Richmond. "Come alone," I said. Then I called Natalie. I told her Daniel had offered to blame everything on her in exchange for the video. She did not believe me. So I sent her one altered page from his legal file. Rebecca had created it using language from Daniel's real documents. It named Natalie as the mastermind behind the false companies. "He chose himself," I told her. "He always does." Natalie began to cry. I felt no satisfaction. "Not yet." "Meet me at the warehouse tonight," I said. "Come alone, and I'll give you the evidence you need." After ending the call, I looked at Rebecca. "They'll both come armed." "Yes," she said. "They may try to kill each other." "Yes." "And if the FBI doesn't arrive in time?" Rebecca checked the small recording device beneath my collar. "Then you keep them talking." That night, I walked into the dark warehouse carrying an empty flash drive. Daniel entered through the east door. Natalie entered through the west. Neither knew the other was coming. And for the first time since my car went over that mountain, I was exactly where I wanted to be. Part 4. TX Kasnam. The warehouse had once produced uniforms for the military. Now it held broken machines, hanging chains, and 18 years of anger. I stood beneath a single work light. Daniel saw Natalie first. His hand moved inside his coat. "What is she doing here?" Natalie raised a pistol. "You were going to blame me." Daniel looked at me, and I watched him understand the trap. "Claire is lying." "Like you lied about the money?" Natalie asked. "Like you lied when you said we would leave together." Put the gun down. "Did you sign papers naming me as the owner of Blue Ridge Materials?" Daniel's eyes shifted toward the doors. "The police are looking for Claire. We can solve this if we stay calm. Answer me. Her shout echoed through the building. I kept my voice steady. Tell her about the account in the Cayman Islands, Daniel. He stared at me. There was no Cayman account. I invented it to make him react. His reaction told Natalie everything she needed to believe. You moved the money, she whispered. Daniel turned on her. You would have nothing without me. I gave you Claire's passwords. I signed every paper. I helped put her in that car. There it was. The first clear confession. The recorder beneath my collar captured every word. Daniel stepped closer to Natalie. And you enjoyed it? Because you said she was going to destroy us. She found the accounts. We had no choice. There is always a choice, I said. They both looked at me. You tied my hands, I continued. You drugged me. You poured alcohol over me and sent my car down a mountain. Tell me which part gave you no choice. Daniel's face became cold. You should have stayed out of my business. Luis Ortega stayed out of your business. He worked for you. Luis was stupid. Somewhere in the darkness, Thomas was listening through Rebecca's receiver. I prayed he would remain outside. Did Warren kill him? I asked. Warren did what I paid him to do. And Paul Mercer. Daniel smiled slightly. You have no evidence. I found Ruth's bracelet under Rivergate. For the first time, real fear appeared in his eyes. You went into the tunnel. So did you. Last night. With Detective Croft, Natalie lowered the pistol a fraction. What tunnel? Daniel ignored her. Where are the files, Claire? I held up the flash drive. First, the truth. You want a confession. I want to hear why. He laughed. Why? Because people like the Mercers spend their lives sitting on valuable things they don't deserve. Because Luis thought being honest made him powerful. Because you looked at numbers and believed they gave you the right to judge me. And because you wanted my sister. Daniel glanced at Natalie. That was convenient. Her face changed. In that instant, Natalie finally saw him clearly. You said you loved me. I said what you needed to hear. She pointed the gun at his chest. Daniel drew his own weapon. Drop it, he said. Neither moved. I stood between two people who had shared my table, slept beneath my roof, and planned my death. Daniel, I said. If you shoot her, you prove everything. The only witness is a fugitive. There are more witnesses than you think. His eyes lifted toward the rafters. He understood. Daniel fired at the work light. Darkness swallowed the room. I dropped to the floor. Natalie screamed. 3 more shots exploded. A bullet struck a metal machine. Sparks scattered across the concrete. I crawled behind a steel table and pulled the spare phone from my pocket. Its screen showed the live audio feed was still active. Then, a hand seized my ankle. Daniel dragged me backward. I kicked him, but he struck my injured shoulder. Pain blinded me. Where are the files? Already sent. He pressed the gun against my side. Then you're useless. A shot rang out. Daniel fell against me. Natalie stood several yards away. Smoke rose from her pistol. For one heartbeat, I thought she had saved me. Then she aimed at my face. He was right about one thing, she said. You always judged me. I protected you. You controlled me. I paid your tuition. I gave you a home. Exactly. Everything was a gift from perfect Claire. Her voice broke, and I finally understood that Natalie had carried resentment for years. Daniel had not created it. He had simply fed it until she became useful. I never wanted you beneath me, I said. I wanted you beside me. Too late. She tightened her finger on the trigger. Then floodlights filled the warehouse. Federal agents! Drop the weapon. Natalie turned toward the sound. I pushed the steel table with both feet. It struck her knees. The gun fired into the ceiling as she fell. Agents entered from every door. Rebecca reached me first. Daniel was alive. Natalie's bullet had struck his upper chest, missing his heart. As paramedics carried him out, he looked at me. "You think you won?" he whispered. I leaned close enough that only he could hear. "No, Daniel. You confessed. You did the winning for me." Detective Croft was arrested at Rivergate while supervising the concrete trucks. Federal agents stopped the work minutes before the tunnel was sealed. They recovered the remains of Ruth and Evelyn Mercer beneath the garage. Evidence from the site linked Daniel and Croft to the disappearance. Warren Pike surrendered. He admitted sabotaging Louise's truck on Daniel's orders. He also identified the man who had set Paul Mercer's house on fire. For 3 days, the news changed every hour. My name was cleared. My clients called with apologies. People who had condemned me now described me as brave. I did not feel brave. I felt tired. Then Rebecca delivered the news that destroyed our entire plan. The warehouse recording could not be used. The device had transmitted the confession, but the original file was corrupted when Daniel fell against me. His lawyers argued the live listeners had misunderstood an incomplete conversation. Warren's testimony helped, but he was an admitted criminal seeking a lighter sentence. Natalie refused to cooperate. The attempted murder case remained strong because of the car, the drugs, and Natalie's statement in the warehouse. But Daniel's lawyers offered prosecutors a deal. He would plead guilty to financial crimes and reckless endangerment. He might serve less than 10 years. Louis, Paul, Ruth, and Evelyn were dead. Daniel had tried to burn me alive. Less than 10 years was not justice. When I visited him in the hospital under federal guard, he smiled. "You should take the deal," I said. He studied me. "Why would you want that?" "Because a trial will expose everything. The affairs, the false companies. Natalie, our marriage." His smile widened. "There she is, my careful Claire. Still afraid of public shame." I lowered my eyes. "Take the deal, Daniel. Let this end." He leaned back against his pillow. "No." I looked up. "No deal," he said. "They can't prove murder. When I walk out, I'm taking back my company, my house, and every dollar you think belongs to you." That was exactly what I hoped he would say. Because I had lied about the damaged recording. The original file was perfect. Rebecca and the prosecutor had created the story together. Knowing Daniel's pride would never allow him to accept a small punishment if he believed the most dangerous evidence was gone. He rejected the deal in writing the next morning. 1 hour later, the government filed 4 murder charges, 1 attempted murder charge, conspiracy charges, fraud charges, bribery charges, and racketeering charges. The full warehouse confession was entered into evidence. Daniel's attorney played it for him in a locked interview room. I was not there, but Rebecca described his face. She said, "He listened without moving until he heard his own voice say, 'Warren did what I paid him to do.' Then he asked for the deal. The prosecutor said no." Part 5. Hahas justice elefti biendi. Daniel's trial began 8 months later. By then, Rivergate Commons had been evacuated. Engineers found severe structural problems throughout the building. The city relocated every tenant, and the property was placed under federal control. I testified for 2 days. Daniel sat 10 feet away from me. He wore a dark blue suit and the expression he once used at charity dinners. Calm, respectable, injured by other people's suspicion. His lawyer asked about my medication, my business, and every argument in our marriage. He suggested I had created the false accounts. He suggested I hated Daniel because of his affair. He suggested the crash was an accident I had turned into a story of revenge. I answered slowly. I did not argue. I described the wine, the trunk, the smell of gasoline. The kiss between my husband and my sister. The car beginning to roll. Then the prosecutor played the warehouse recording. Daniel's own voice filled the courtroom. He called Louise stupid. He admitted Warren did what he was paid to do. He said the Mercers owned something they did not deserve. The respectable mask finally slipped. He turned toward the jury, not with regret, but anger. That anger convicted him before the lawyers finished. Natalie accepted a plea agreement on the 4th day of trial. In exchange for her full testimony, prosecutors removed one conspiracy to murder charge. She described how she crushed sleeping pills into my wine. She described tying my wrists. She described releasing the parking brake. She also revealed something I had not known. Daniel had planned to kill her after my insurance payment arrived. He had purchased a second life insurance policy using forged documents. Natalie was the insured person. Daniel was the beneficiary. My sister had helped a man murder me while he prepared to murder her next. When Natalie left the witness stand, she looked at me. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Then the guards led her away. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. Daniel was found guilty on every major charge. He received 4 life sentences plus 60 years, with no possibility of parole. Detective Croft received 32 years. Warren Pike received 18 years after helping recover evidence in all 4 deaths. Natalie received 25 years. When the judge asked whether I wanted to speak at Daniel's sentencing, I stood. My hands did not shake. For 18 years, I said. I believed my husband's greatest talent was building beautiful things. I was wrong. His greatest talent was hiding decay behind clean walls. Luis Ortega saw the decay. The Mercer family refused to surrender to it. Thomas carried the truth when the rest of us were afraid. Daniel believed money could purchase silence. He believed love was a weakness he could use. He believed people like me would protect our reputation, even while he destroyed our lives. He was wrong. I do not ask this court to punish him because I hate him. Hate would keep me connected to him. I ask this court to protect every person he would harm if he were free. Daniel watched me without blinking. I looked directly at him. You tried to erase me. Instead, you made me the witness who ended you. After sentencing, reporters waited outside the courthouse. I walked past them without speaking. Thomas stood near the steps, holding a framed photograph of Luis. We went to the cemetery together. Luis's grave was covered with flowers. For years, his death had been listed as an accident. A Newmarker called him a whistleblower whose courage saved lives. Thomas placed one hand on the stone. He would have liked you, he said. I wish I had been brave sooner. You were alive sooner. Sometimes that has to come first. I never forgot those words. The government seized Daniel's properties and accounts. After the victims were compensated, part of the remaining money funded a new nonprofit. We called it the Ortega Mercer Foundation. It provided legal and financial help to workers who reported dangerous construction practices. Thomas became its first director. Rebecca served on the board. I rebuilt my accounting business, but I changed the kind of work I accepted. I began helping families trace fraud, challenge false debts, and understand contracts designed to confuse them. For the first time, numbers felt like more than a career. They became a language I could use to protect people. The house outside Richmond was sold. I kept almost nothing from it. I kept my mother's recipe book, a blue ceramic bowl, and the little metal tool that had broken the car window. The necklace Natalie wore during the television interview was returned to me after her arrest. I placed it in a box but could not bring myself to wear it. 1 year after the trial, I received a letter from her. Claire, I have written this 20 times. Every version sounded like an excuse. Daniel lied to me, but he did not force me to hate you. I chose to turn every kindness into an insult, because admitting I needed you made me feel small. I wanted what you had. Then I helped destroy it. I do not expect forgiveness. I only need you to know that when I released the break, I heard you say my name. I have heard it every night since. Natalie, I read the letter twice. Then I put it away. People often think forgiveness is a door. They imagine you either open it or keep it locked. For me, forgiveness was a window. I could look through it and see the wounded person my sister had been. I could understand how Daniel found that wound and widened it. But understanding did not require me to invite her back into my life. I wrote one sentence in reply. I hope you become someone who would never make that choice again. I did not tell her I forgave her. I did not tell her I hated her. Both statements would have been dishonest. 3 years after the night of the crash, the city demolished Rivergate Commons. Families gathered at a safe distance to watch. Former tenants, construction workers, reporters, and relatives of the victims stood together beneath a clear October sky. When the charges exploded, the building folded inward. A cloud of dust rose above the river. Thomas stood beside me. How does it feel? He asked. I watched the place that had held so many secrets disappear. Smaller than I expected. That was the truth. For years, Daniel had seemed larger than every room he entered. His influence reached into banks, courts, police offices, and even my own family. But once the truth was visible, he became only a frightened man surrounded by evidence. Power often looks permanent from the outside. Most of it is only silence holding its shape. After the demolition, workers recovered a small metal box from beneath the old Mercer house. Inside were family photographs damaged by heat and water. One photograph showed Ruth, Paul, and Evelyn standing beside the river when they were young. They were laughing. Behind them stood the same oak tree that had survived the fire, the construction, and the demolition. The photograph now hangs in the foundation's office. Beside it is a picture of Louis wearing his work helmet. My picture is not there. I did not want it there. This was never only my story. It belonged to everyone Daniel expected the world to forget. On the 5th anniversary of the crash, I drove back to the mountain road. The damaged guard post had been replaced. Young trees grew along the slope. Far below, the creek moved quietly through the woods. I walked to the place where the car had gone over. For years, I had dreamed about that moment. In the dreams, the seat belt would not open. The window would not break. Daniel would stand above the flames, smiling. But that morning, the mountain looked peaceful. I took the second key from my pocket. The bank box was gone. The evidence had served its purpose. The key opened nothing now. Still, I had carried it through the investigation and both trials. It reminded me that even when Daniel controlled the house, the money, the police report, and the story shown on television, one small piece of the truth had remained beyond his reach. I closed my fingers around it. Then I threw it into the creek. The water caught the key and carried it beneath the trees. I expected to feel sadness. Instead, I felt space. Space for mornings that did not begin with fear. Space for friendships I did not have to question. Space for work that mattered. Space for a life no one else could define. My phone rang as I returned to the road. It was a young woman named Rachel. She worked for a contractor in North Carolina and had discovered false safety reports. She was terrified of losing her job. "Someone gave me your number," she said. "They told me you would believe me." I looked once more at the hillside. "I believe you," I said. "Now tell me everything." As she spoke, I walked toward my car. Daniel once believed he could bury the truth beneath concrete, money, and my burned body. But truth does not need to be stronger than the people hiding it. It only needs one person willing to carry the key. END.